Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
From Offscript Media, I am Matthew Zachary, and this is Out of Patience. On today's show, I'm speaking with one of my heroes, Dr. Catharine Young. She's the former Senior Director of Science Policy at the Biden Cancer Initiative and currently the Executive Director of the Shepherd Foundation. This is an extraordinary human being. She's a Presidential Leadership Scholar, a TED Fellow, got a postdoctorate fellowship in biomedical engineering at Cornell. You're going to love this show. Dr. Catharine Young, have a listen. You're in town for what?
Well, this morning, our team at the Shepherd Foundation met with the TED team. So you might have heard of the TED Talks and those things.
That whole idea is worth sharing stuff.
Exactly. So we met with that team because they have what is called the Audacious Prize, where they fund organizations for multi-million dollars over multi-years. And we were talking about an idea worth sharing with them.
I hope it's a good one.
I hope so. We'll find out.
No judgments. No judgments.
Right.
Well, we're thrilled you're here.
Thank you.
It's a privilege to have you here. I've been a huge fan, as you know, of all your work, which is substantial. Don't do LinkedIn unless you're prepared to see the resplendent experiences you've had in your career.
Well, I
haven't used that
them.
word in a long time.
Wow. Yes. Thank you.
That's the
so
SAT
much.
word of the day.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look that one up after I leave.
Well, we have to start with you were born in South Africa.
I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, and lived there for 18 years, born and raised. Mm-hmm. Moved to the States right after Nelson Mandela came into power with the end and abolishment of apartheid.
Good.
So came here to the U.S. with my parents to North Carolina.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I have you went to the University of Missouri.
Yes, for
grad
school.
How'd you get there?
I know. So it's, I've kind of leaped and bounded all over the U.S. So landed in Charlotte, North Carolina first from South Africa, and went to the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And after that, realized that I loved science. I wanted to get a PhD in science. The University of Missouri has an excellent biomedical sciences program, and that's what I wanted to do. So ended up going to University of Missouri in the middle of the country. So a great experience in terms of, just living in another part of the country.
Was the science bug always in you?
It was. I had an older brother. He was 7 years older than me. And he had such a strong affinity for science and math. And I think because of him, having him as a role model in a way growing up, really just not forced, but just the trajectory was always straight because he was in front of me and I wanted to do what he did. And I often look back at that and think, gosh, what if I didn't have my brother as a role model? What would I be doing today? And so for me, it has really embedded this desire to be a role model and to really encourage others, specifically for women in the STEM field.
I mean, you were a pioneer in the day. Those weren't even words back then.
Wasn't using those words back then, no.
Those are new words today.
Yeah, exactly.
Back then it was called industrial arts. You learn how to do shit that just wasn't like books and stuff.
Exactly. And I will say, kind of growing up in that era, especially in South Africa, women typically were not encouraged to do those types of subjects. So, the math and the science, and they were more encouraged to do at that time, and I'm totally giving my age away, but like typewriting and things like that.
Just go do stenography.
Yeah, or home economics.
Yes,
and I had no interest in any of that. So really, it's been a part of me from the beginning, and I think really because of the encouragement of my family.
And as an underachiever, you then went to Cornell for a postdoc in spoiler alert, I went to Binghamton for biomedical engineering.
No way.
And then I promptly gave up after organic chemistry 4 at 7 a.m.
my gosh.
sophomore year, first semester.
Well, I'm surprised that you even got into organic for because my goodness, that is just, a whole journey on itself.
It was insane. I mean, I did well in high school, and they're like, Binghamton is just far away enough.
Right.
And biomedical 5-year master's program. And I'm like, nope. My dad's like,
nope.
Tuition.
Oh my God. It's not for everybody. But so my postdoc was in a biomedical engineering department, which was fascinating on its own because again, it was looking at a problem that I did in my PhD work which was all in the brain. My PhD is all in neuroscience. Looking at that problem in a totally different way. So biomedical engineering is all about the tools that you use, the instruments that you can design to be able to look into the brain or measure things in the brain. And my PhD was very much looking at how the brain operates in terms of physiology and the body. So it was a fascinating switch because it was still at the core the same thing that we were studying, but using very different tools and technology.
Well, it's still like the most mysterious thing in the universe.
And it's what really drew me to the brain in the first place because it is such a black box. Mm-hmm. And I feel like even the more we know, and I felt this way studying the brain, the more we know, the more we don't know about it because you realize how incredibly complex and integrated the brain is and that we have so much more to learn and understand about it.
Yeah. I should also just bring up that Andrew's from Rochester. I went to Binghamton, you went to Cornell. We cannot avoid mentioning Wegmans.
We cannot.
I think it's going to be a recurring theme on my show is Wegmans.
We would all be, I mean, Wegmans was a staple every Saturday morning.
It's the tie that binds.
Yes. It truly is. It is. Yes. I mean, we would not be welcome back to that part of the world if we did not mention Wegmans and the impact it had on our lives.
I don't think I told you this, Andrew, when my orientation at Binghamton was summer of 1992. Wegmans was part of orientation.
Was it?
What?
They took all the downstate kids on a trip to Wegmans on the bus, off campus communication, and we went to Wegmans. And I'd never been, obviously, in like these agape, jaw-dropping faces of Long Islanders and Staten Islanders. Like, what is this mecca that I've been denied knowing about my whole adolescence?
It's kind of how I felt when I first moved to the States from South Africa, where we had literally about 2 different types of cereal to choose from, and then you go into a place like Wegmans where you have 200 different types of cereals to choose from. Yes. I mean, it is overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think, why do we need so many choices?
We don't really need. That's America.
No, it is America.
It's just a hashtag.
It is
America.
Definitely a thing. Yeah.
I want to talk. I didn't know the DoD did other stuff besides blow things up and invent bombs and stuff. The DoD is amazing.
It is amazing.
And they fund all sorts of incredible research. They do all these things that you don't know that they do. Talk about your experience there.
It was a absolute life-changing experience for me. I had gone from my postdoc work, realizing at the time that I didn't want to spend my life in the lab and that I wanted to do something more that had a global impact.
Outdoor cat stuff.
Exactly. And so I applied for a fellowship called the American Association for the Advancement of Science and Technology Fellowship, which allows PhDs to get placed in a federal agency for 2 years. And the idea is that as a PhD, you learn about the science policy process, and in return, you're able to share your knowledge and skill sets with the government agency, because as we all know, there's a total dearth of scientists in federal agencies, especially in a place like the DoD when you're working at the policy level.
Right.
Fantastic program, and it really allows people who are interested in other areas beyond their PhDs and beyond working in a lab experience to see what else you can do with those skill sets that you've just gained after many, many years of studying. And so I was placed at the Department of Defense in the Biological, Nuclear, and Chemical Warfare Division.
Gesundheit.
Right?
Oh, my God.
That was a mouthful. Surprised I can actually still say that. But essentially, what I learned during that process was that the DoD is such a force in diplomacy. And so what we worked on specifically in my kind of tenure there, which was about 2.5 years, was first I worked on the former Soviet Union portfolio, which is
just that.
I mean, first I had to Google that where that was, but once I figured out that, what you learn is that these countries still have a lot of remnants of chemical weapons, of biological weapons. You can think of anthrax, for example, and the problem is that with these things still sitting around, a lot of them are not secured. They still actually pose a great threat, not only to that specific country, but to the rest of the world, and the United States included. So the United States plays a really big role in developing relationships with these countries and their governments to help secure them, provide security. If they are actually doing research with very dangerous pathogens, the United States will upgrade their equipment, upgrade their labs, provide the best protocols to use so that they can do it in the best and most secure way possible.
And your role in this was to...
My role in this was the office that I worked with kind of oversaw all of that kind of diplomacy. So I was very fortunate enough to be able to go over to a lot of these countries with diplomatic envoys to meet with the government officials to talk about what the U.S. was going to do and see that process unfold. My biggest kind of impactful experience during that time was with the outbreak of Ebola in Western Africa.
Yes.
And I was switched to the African portfolio and actually got to travel to Liberia during the time because it was a fascinating experience. You would walk through hospitals where there would be Ebola patients, and there would be fridges in the corridors basically with Ebola samples in them. Just there, freely accessible for anybody to be able to open up and see. And so our role was to be able to secure those samples and to help them with that, because again, they thought they might be a possibility for nefarious actions, for people coming in, taking those samples and using them in potentially, a terrorism type event.
What a life experience.
Oh, it was...
It's like one of those things, how'd I get here?
I think about that all the time, to be honest. A lot of my experiences have just been so world-opening and completely transformative in a way, and that was one of them. Absolutely.
So from there, again, like we're doing the Dora the Explorer LinkedIn conversation here,
Yes.
because it's so rife with opportunities here. I mean, you had a stint at the Foreign Commonwealth Office.
Yes.
But then you... found a way to be part of the Moonshot with the Biden initiative.
I did. So I worked at the British Embassy as their science advisor. Again, kind of really at the intersection between science and policy between the two countries, which was, again, a life-changing experience. But that led me, again, working at the British Embassy, you can only go so far before you have to become a diplomat to be able to then make those decisions.
Sure.
And I reached that glass ceiling pretty quickly. And so I was open to new opportunities and looking to see what that next step would be for me. And I was so fortunate to be able to get the position as the Senior Director of Science Policy for the Biden Cancer Initiative. They were looking for somebody right at the same time I was looking for new opportunities. And it was just one of those experiences that it was the right time at the right place and just right all around. So,
I mean, with my advocacy hat on Running Stupid Cancer, I never felt that BCI got the sort of the schoolhouse rock understanding of what it meant to the average person out there.
Right.
If you're able to schoolhouse rock what its initial purpose was, how would you explain that?
It was such a unique organization in that it didn't focus on one specific cancer. Rather, our goal was to look at the system that cancer resides in, identify those barriers that if you could remove them, you could really accelerate the path towards treatment and support for patients. And we realized that the way to do that was to bring the right people together that had the skills and the resources to be able to do that. And our power was really Vice President Biden, Dr. Biden, who were, our leaders in this organization that could bring those people together. And there's not many organizations that have that kind of power to be able to bring who they needed at the right time and have everybody being absolutely 100% dedicated to that cause.
Yeah, the way I was to understand it, and as I came to learn way more about it, is it was a very holistic scientific approach. It wasn't a very linear scientific approach where research is research and it's indoor cats and labs and process and blah, blah. This was, again, the regrettable tragedy of Bo's passing led them to appreciate that it wasn't just more than cure. There was so much more in the ether of understanding why and how.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think all of my experiences have lent to this view of, first of all, you cannot accomplish something big by yourself. And you have to recognize that there are 1,000 different players that need to come together in order to really make a significant difference, because everybody is bringing with them a different type of skill set, a different way to view the problem, a different way of thinking about solutions. And if you don't have that holistic group together, you're just not going to get to the right solution. And I think the Biden Cancer Initiative has really been the closest I've ever been to really kind of bring that solution to really big problems as well.
Yeah, someone once told me early on that collaboration is the new competition, and you guys really embodied that.
Absolutely. There was, from the get-go, we wanted to make sure that people understood that we were not a competitor in the space. And cancer, especially when it comes to the nonprofit organizations, can be, or at least my experience is that a pretty competitive space. We wanted to make it very clear that our goal was to elevate, empower, and to provide a platform for the work that was already being done. Because one of the biggest challenges we found was that patients or family members or researchers didn't even know of some of the incredible work that was being done because it's so buried. Yeah. And we wanted to uplift that a bit.
A center of excellence that is capable of convening and bringing people together.
Exactly. Exactly right.
And is there an organization or an institution that's prepared to do that now?
It's a good question. I look at Vice President Biden and Dr. Biden as these two individuals that were really able to radically transform the way we work in the cancer space that I haven't seen people at that, kind of status or level do before. And not to say that there are not people out there who are leading this effort, but them with Vice President Biden stepping back because of the presidential election, it has kind of left this temporary gap.
Bit of a vacuum.
Yeah, I would believe
vacuum.
that. But on the positive side is that regardless of the outcome that will come from this, he will return to that work.
Yes.
In whatever capacity that is. That I absolutely believe.
So in the time that you were there, that it existed, and I'm just going to say phase one, what do you think was the most tangible or tactical accomplishment you can be proud of?
I think for us, there were a couple. We were really at kind of the precipice of a lot of stuff that was about to start in the implementing stage. I think we never quite managed to get to the point where we could look back and say we have an absolute tangible product for somebody. But I think one of our greatest contributions was just the mobilization of a lot of the communities and rethinking a lot of how we approach these solutions. So going back to the fact that bringing the people together who may not have been sitting at the table together before, but then having had that experience, understood that it's important that we need to collaborate on a whole host of things. So, but we were focused on a whole range of issues, all the way from prevention to the looking at transforming and reforming clinical trials and what that would look like, patient access to treatment and cost of care, to data sharing. So these were massive problems that require a lot of time and energy, and it will be interesting to see how we might be able to continue that work once we get them back.
Back with our guest after the break.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
I think one of my biggest takeaways of the ongoing conversations was this idea of, care isn't just clinical. Care is human.
Absolutely.
And there was a lot of talk about supporting the nursing community.
Oh, yes.
Way much more.
Right.
Because they're underserved. There aren't enough of them in this country. There's a huge gap in pay and access and even the recognition of the value they have to the health economic outcomes conversation out there. I was really jazzed that was something that was living in the mindset or the philosophy of what needed to be accomplished, because I cannot speak enough about how critical the nursing profession is to making everything suck a little less.
Everything we did had a nurse's or several influence in it. We would never have a conversation or tackle a big problem without that perspective, because as a group, we absolutely understood the value of that. And, it's just like anything in life where if you look at a problem or a service, it's often several layers down where the actual work gets done.
Right.
And those are the people that you need to be able to tap in, who often hold the answers to your solutions or your problems.
Right.
But yet we often fail to include them in those conversations. And until we actually do a better job at that, I think we're always going to be spinning around in circles.
Yeah, we would talk about a portfolio of end users.
Absolutely.
This subject of it sounds like the Biden Cancer Initiative was moving toward the establishment. Is this too strong a word, of standards or best practices gathered across all of these organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we were looking at was actually standardizing data, for example. So the idea that, data sharing is a really big issue, but even if we do share data, if you don't have it in one standardized form, it's really of no use. So it is looking at the system and being able to define what those standards are that allows the system to work on a much smoother scale to allow then for acceleration towards those treatments. So yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that.
Yeah, there's no Babel fish yet that unifies the way different health systems that have been evolving over the last couple of years can talk to each other.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, this really talks to how embedded our healthcare system is entrenched in really bad culture. And I'm probably preaching to the choir now, but a lot of what we were dealing with really ultimately boiled down to if people decided that they wanted to change it, they could.
Yeah.
And that was simply the simplest answer. But because it's so difficult to kind of change trajectory of massive scaled systems like a hospital or healthcare system, and because it's also entrenched right now in financial gain, it's very hard to start changing that trajectory until you get the buy-in of people who not only can make those decisions to make the change, but actually believe that this is the way that it needs to be done now. And that's hard.
Yeah, the I'm mad as hell and can't take it anymore is starting to really crest.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And I think more and more we have come to the light in terms of the voice of the patient in everything that we do too. So we spoke about nurses being so important,
Yes.
but my goodness, we cannot solve these issues without the patients themselves too having a voice in this. And I do believe there is this momentum growing where patients are getting a lot louder and they're starting to become way more educated about what their rights are and what should be done for them.
Right.
And I'm excited to see that there is this kind of mobilizing of patients and their voices together to start really shifting the needle forward, because I really think that at the crux of it is what we need.
Well, we talk all the time about healthcare is not a demand market.
Right. Exactly.
No one wakes up and says, I can't wait to go to, MD Anderson
Exactly.
one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no way to know what the customer wants because you can't expect them to know what they need.
Right.
And how do you reverse engineer a market that doesn't want to be there in the first place,
Exactly.
but you're only listening to the people who are already in the market?
Exactly.
So how do you help the people that aren't in the market?
Right.
It's this phenomenally ridiculous, like Neil deGrasse Tyson level head exploding
Absolutely.
conversation to have.
Yeah. No, but it's so important, and I think if anything that I've learned, it's that the U.S. especially is so well positioned to start making those changes because we have the people, we have the infrastructure, we have the mind, the powerful minds that can come up with innovative solutions, and we just need to actually start getting stuff done.
And the arrival at a solid recommendation for a solution is only part of it.
Absolutely.
You alluded to the financial interest associated with many players,
Right.
In things not changing or in things changing in a way that benefits them, right? And so it seems like a very important aspect of the convening power
Absolutely.
of a Biden Cancer Initiative is to get those people out in public and to help them speak in public and be accountable for
Absolutely.
making those decisions.
And Vice
it is a
President,
political act.
It is, and Vice President Biden was very good at that and not afraid to do that. And you bring up another good point, because even though we were really good at convening, and a lot of people will nod their heads at this. It's not just about the convening; it's about the execution and implementation of the idea, which is really hard. So you get a lot of motivation and inspiration from these groups when they come together at the table, but when everybody leaves and goes home, it just falls flat. And so one of the biggest challenges I see is how do we continue that momentum going forward and keeping people motivated to push that forward, especially in our case where we were really depending on people's goodwill to do this in and above their day jobs.
Right.
So a lot of what we were asking people to do was not necessarily a part of their baked in job description, and what they were being evaluated on their job. So it requires people to really go that one step further.
Yeah.
And
The retention strategy.
Yes, the retention strategy. But I will say that I was so surprised to see just how dedicated people were to work on that.
So in our time left, because you can't sit still, you're now doing a million other things, but let's talk about the Shepherd Foundation, because that's very
Yes,
interesting in your
thank
foray
you.
to rare disease.
Absolutely. So, my current position is the executive director of the Shepherd Foundation. It is a foundation that is focused on rare cancers, and coming from the Biden Cancer Initiative, and I've been so influenced by my time there that I honestly see this as an opportunity to do very much similar work, but now focused on the rare cancer community. Although, in all honesty, when I think of rare cancer and what we might do to be able to help or support, it really, that extends to the entire cancer community as a whole. But I am so excited to have this position. I see rare cancer patients as a community that really have been served a lot of injustice and inequality, especially when it comes to treatment options and support and research dollars that go their way. And so I'm excited to really try and push that forward.
Yeah, justice is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but I believe that when you enter the shit happens store,
Right.
there's no greeter.
Right.
And how do you live your life with dignity in a market you didn't want to belong
Exactly.
in?
Exactly.
But that's extraordinary. And again, like having a partnership with the National Organization of Rare Disorders now, where I'm becoming like the new voice of,
Right.
of rare disease.
Yep.
I'm learning so much about not just that I am in the rare disease, as any young adult cancer is a rare disease,
Yep.
but how do you even wrap your head around millions of people living and suffering who just want to have some dignity
Absolutely.
and live a great life?
Absolutely. And, in our research, we've discovered that out of the 400 different types of cancers there are, 380 of them are rare.
Yeah.
Which means that out of the 1.2 million people that will be diagnosed, 550,000 of them will have a rare cancer.
Right.
So our message really, and I believe NORD is very much in aligned with this, is that rare is not rare.
No, it's not.
And we have to change that narrative. And because of that, if we can change that narrative, we can start changing the federal dollars that go towards it. And
Yeah.
if you change that, you change the development pipeline for therapeutics and drugs. And that then starts to open up the opportunities for those patients to live with dignity and have an extended life.
I mean, NORD's huge coup was getting the Rare Disease Act passed, but that's, I think, first steps.
Right.
There should totally be a revisitation of what that means in 2020
Absolutely.
and dig down into how we improve what clearly still needs a lot of improving.
Absolutely. And I'm so heartened by the NORD Rare Cancer Coalition as well. It's the coming, again, those convenings of those types of organizations and that thought leadership that really starts to change the way we think about things and push time in and money towards those things.
Yeah.
So.
And as we look at the Shepherd Foundation, I'm very interested in knowing the specific approach that you bring. You're focused on rare cancers.
Yeah.
And what are the areas of greatest interest for the foundation?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I did when I joined was I kind of did a landscape analysis of rare cancer organizations that already exist. Because my thought is that, if we can start to galvanize the community together, we can have so much more power and impact. So we identified about 240 organizations. We've reached out to every single one of them. We gave them a survey and asked them, what are their biggest barriers? What are you working on? What do you need help with? And we took that really as the basis of what we might start looking at. So one is molecular diagnostics. This is a huge one. So the idea that a patient can have a test done to really get their tumor sequenced, identify what those mutations are, and then either see whether or not there are already targeted drugs or maybe are eligible for a particular clinical trial is huge.
Right.
And yet the community is very uneducated about the molecular diagnostic test, either on the patient side or the clinician side who doesn't offer it. And this is potentially a cost-saving, time-saving, and life-saving test. So we have a huge emphasis on the public awareness and education about molecular diagnostics, but also the data that comes from molecular diagnostics, and how, if we can start pooling that together, we can actually start to group people together in terms of their molecular drivers and start targeting drugs for those patients. So instead of it being lung cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, it is now what is driving your cancer, which may, be across several different cancers. And that it kind of ushers us into this new era of precision medicine, which is where we are going for. So molecular diagnostics is one. We also have a lot of legislative priorities because we believe that in order to make change, you have to tackle it from all different angles, and trying to get federal policy changes is one way we can do that. So Shepherd last year just secured $12.5 million in the federal budget specifically for rare cancer. This was the first time rare cancers ever had a line in the federal budget before. And we're going to push for $50 million this year. So we are trying to tackle it from that federal angle and getting everybody on board that this is what we need to do.
So you continue to be at work in D.C.?
I am, yes.
Very
so
much
we
so.
are, so the foundation is based in D.C., and a lot of our work will continue out of that front. And then, of course, galvanizing and being that platform and unifier, similar to what the Biden Cancer Initiative did. I would love to do that for the rare cancer community. There's so much good work being done, and yet not a lot of people are aware of it, and we want to shine a light on that. Uncovering and making aware the resources that currently exist for patients, so that when they are diagnosed, they have a place to come to that lays it out for them, I think is something that we will be focusing on as well.
Yeah, the very definition of advocacy is making sure someone, the next person, is better off than the first person.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
I'm a huge fan. You've done so much in your career, and it's like you're just getting started. Oh. We talk about I'm in like version 6 of my life. You're in like version 40,000 of your life. And so much more to go. But it's been,
I so appreciate that.
What an honor to have you here to chat, and welcome to the rare disease world.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here, honestly, and to have this conversation with you. And I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for today, folks. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, follow us on social, and tell all your friends to listen. Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary is a product of Offscript Media. Our executive producer is Matthew Zachary. Our senior producers are Jen Horangeff and Andrew McDowell. Darren Tunn is our production intern. It is recorded, mixed, and edited by Matthew Zachary. Our theme music is by the Mike Van Allen Quintet and by Mara. For advertising and media inquiries, email media@offscript.com. Hit us up at contact@offscript.com to share comments, feedback, and make guest recommendations. For more information, visit offscript.com.